Ashura, and number 2 is the Karbala. So the day of Ashura has passed already. Now it's the night that follows the Ashura. However, alhamdulillah, a few of us, we gathered here at UICA and we had the iftar together and we prayed together, and alhamdulillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward every single one of you who fasted the day of Ashura. And if you missed the day before, remember to fast tomorrow. And if you have fasted yesterday and you fasted today, then you're good, inshallah. So the day of Ashura, it's a very blessed or a sacred day for Muslims, for the reason that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam spoke in different occasions about the blessings of this day. First and foremost, there are narrations, like for example in the Muwatta of Imam Malik, that Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam used to fast. And as a matter of fact, in the Muwatta it says that this used to be commemorated before, during the time of Jahiliyyah as well. And the Quraysh used to fast this day. And Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam also fasted this day before. And then later on, he also saw people in Medina, who are in particularly Jews, who are fasting this day, the day of Ashura. And then he said that we have a right over Musa alayhi salam to fast. We have the right, we have more right to Musa alayhi salam to fast this day, because we're, signaling that we are closer, aqidah-wise, religion-wise, to the pure teachings of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam than you are. That's what he was saying. But he mentioned that we fast a day before or a day after in order to differentiate between their practices. Now, this day, essentially, it is known that it is a day when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved children of Israel from Pharaoh. You all know the story, how they were trying to escape from the army and from the Pharaoh, and then they had no other alternative except to go through the sea. There was no the path, or the way ended. There was no way except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had to do a miracle, or they were gonna just drown, go into the sea and then be drowned. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He saved them. He caused a miracle, as you all know there, where He told to Musa alayhi salam to strike the sea with his staff, and the sea opened in two, and Musa alayhi salam, together with his brother and his followers, they all passed on the other side, and they all made it safe, except the army of the Pharaoh who were following Sayyidina Musa and his followers. They were not able to make it. As a matter of fact, we know that he was drowned, actually, right there, Pharaoh, and together with his army. And we have details of that drowning that the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam told us. He went into details by saying that angel Jibreel alayhi salam came to him, and he said that Amantu bi Rabbi Haruna wa Musa, which is also mentioned in the Quran. When the water came to him and he saw that this is the end, he said that I believe in the Lord of Musa and also Harun. But it was too late. It was too late for him. And they are also mentioning of Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam, the angel Jibreel, throwing at Pharaoh, throwing even sand during that last moment. And we understand from this example that when somebody sees that the death is approaching, the tawbah is not accepted at that time. When you see that the death is coming, and you try to repent for all the sins and for all the life that you have lived in disobedience, then the tawbah is not accepted at that time. That's what Pharaoh was trying to do during his last moment. We're not saying that the tawbah is not accepted when somebody is old and is approaching, even approaching death, like towards the end of the life. Absolutely, the door of tawbah is open. But when the death approaches the person, when the death is right there, and you see the signs that you are about to die, then there is no acceptance of the tawbah, except for somebody who lived as a righteous person. Then saying the La ilaha illallah, or Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abdu wa rasuluh, in that case it's totally permissible. There is nothing wrong with that. And as a matter of fact, it is acceptable from the believers as well when they declare their shahada during that moment. They depart from this world as believers. There are also some other statements about of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam about the ark of Nuh alayhi salam stopping on this day, on the day of Ashura. As you know, the world, water was all over the world, and some contemporary scholars, they mentioned that only in one part of the world, whatever the case may be, the ark of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, Noah, was above the sea. And then on the day of Ashura, as you know, it took a long time for the ark to stop and to find land. But then land came about on the day of Ashura. And the believers who were with Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, they were all saved. And the animals that he carried and everything that he was carrying in that ark saved. So again, this was the day of shukr. It was a day of celebration. And also, even in the case of Bani Israel, it is a day of celebration. But then after that, you have some other narrations that are extremely weak, mentioning about Nuh, about other stories that happened during the lives of the prophets, and they all connect these with these days. But there might be, some of them may be true, some of them may not be. They're based on weak hadith. So, I'm not going to get into so many details, because my lecture today is going to be based on these two things. Number one is the virtues of Ashura, and also the battle of Karbala. So as I talk about these virtues of Ashura, I want to also mention that the main lesson, beside thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this day and being the day of gratitude, we also understand that this day is a day of where the truth wins over the falsehood. Again, the truth, it is a demonstration from God where the truth wins over falsehood. No matter how powerful Pharaoh is, no matter powerful how his army was, no matter how powerful Abu Jahl was during the time of Prophet ﷺ, no matter how powerful many leaders throughout the history were, together with their armies, they were not able to defeat righteous people. They were not able to defeat the light. Even though they tried, and even though it seemed like the light is all gone, but there was always light. And that light came back always. It happened when the believers, I'm talking about the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the light of God, including justice as well, including human rights. Even if we have to incorporate these contemporary issues that our world is dealing with, some of them they have been dealing for thousands of years. But, if we have to incorporate all of them, they will always be in society. They will always overcome injustice, overcome darknesses that continue to appear, and sometimes they remain in our world for some time. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He says, وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Always the end belongs to those who are righteous. Always righteousness will win. But it has a condition. The condition for that is that the believers, people, they must rely on God. They must have a firm belief, and they must rely on Him. And they have to be hopeful. They have to feel inside of them that always and always the help will come from God. Whether it will come at the time when you think that you need it, or at that time when God knows better that you need it in a different time. He has better knowledge than you. In other words, He wants to save that help for a time which is a better time from the time that you thought would be much better. We have to, as I said, we have to believe in Him, we have to rely on Him for everything. And then He will always show us in our lives that the end belongs to those who are righteous. Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, he was helpless. They had no army to fight Pharaoh and his army. Not equivalent at all. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not equivalent to fight Quraysh. He had no equivalent numbers. Later on, throughout the Islamic history, many Muslims who fought, many Muslims who were looking for, their rights, and they were looking to practice their faith and all that, they had no power, but they had Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with them. And no matter how big the enemy looked like, no matter how dark the enemy looked like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always extended and expanded His power and His light. And He enabled the believers always to live in peace and always to see that light coming up. Not always every single believer, for sure, because there are many people who die in times of oppression, in times of injustice. But overall, as time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings inna ma'al usri yusra. Inna ma'al usri yusra, right? So after every difficulty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings that yusr, that ease. So this is what we learn from this occasion. Besides being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we also learn that we must appreciate this help that comes to us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and be convinced that as long as we rely on Him, we will always receive the help from God and the light from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as an individual and as a society as well. The second part of this one, as I told you earlier, is going to be about the Battle of Karbala. Last night I talked to you about the virtues of Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the grandson of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the son of Fatima az-Zahra, and the son of Ali karramallahu wajha, Sayyidina Ali, the cousin of Nabi alayhi salatu salam. Both Sayyidina Hassan and Sayyidina Hussein were considered like the children of Sayyidina Muhammad alayhi salatu salam. Even though they were not his biological children, but they were considered as his children out of honor and virtue that they had. They were both very generous throughout their lives. When they grew up, Sayyidina al-Hassan and al-Hussein, both of them were very, very generous individuals. And they were known for their generosity all over. How could it be otherwise when their grandfather, Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ, was so, and their father as well, and the mother? And we know so many examples from their stories. But unfortunately, I don't have time to go through so many other great qualities and events that happened during his life. But I want to focus to the end of his life, what happened during the time when Yazid became the leader of the Muslim world after the death of his father, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. So we want to talk about these incidents tonight. We want to go into details. And I'm going to do it for you today, inshallah. I have a pen. I have it right here. And I have this board, and I'm going to draw some stuff. I'm not going to do a traditional lecture, but I will do it a little bit more different so you can see. Sometimes by hearing and also seeing, it is a better way to understand and also to remember what was said. Since it is, I don't want to say difficult, but there are so many names, and the history is not something simple. It's very important, I thought, to have this, to draw it for you so you can understand it and remember it as well. For those people, for those individuals who are looking to just hear it, the story, there are so many other scholars as well who have talked about this one. And I also have a recording. I think it's divided in 4 different parts that I recorded probably about 12 years ago. So if you search for that, the Battle of Karbala, the virtues of Ashura and the Battle of Karbala, something in those words, you can probably find that and put my name. You can just listen if you would like to do so. But otherwise, as I said, there are perhaps better scholars than me in explaining this, the Battle of Karbala. But anyways, so today I have, as I said, decided to have it right here. And as I am explaining this, inshallah, I want to start writing some of these words. Can we get this a little bit more this way? So first, I want you to think about Mecca. Alright, this is the first time we're using this, so bear patient with us. Alright, so right here we have Mecca. And then right here we have Medina. And then I'm not going to go and draw the map of these places, but I'm just going to go right here and mention Kufa. Kufa in Iraq. Yes? And then right here, I'm going to put Damascus. Damascus, Syria. Everybody's familiar. You can all see this? It's clear? Alright. And here I'm going to put also some names. Well, by Kufa right here, I also want to put Karbala, because this is very important. So right here, I want to put some names. The first name that I want to put is Sayyidina Hussein. Number 2, I want to put Yazid. Number 3, Marwan bin Hakam. Number 4, Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. Where did that go? Alright, Ubaidullah bin Ziyad. Number 5. I want to put here Omar bin Saad. I want to also put here Muslim bin Aqil. I want to also put here Shimr. All right. What else are we missing here? Hur? All right. Anybody's interested to know more? There's a lot of names. There's Hani, and there are some more. Sinan, bin Anas. All right, so I think this would be good. Let's start. Bismillah ar-Rahman. So, as I mentioned earlier, we know that Sayyidina al-Hasan, the brother of Sayyidina al-Hussein, he gave up his Khalifa, abdicated the Khalifa to Muawiyah. And Muawiyah was in Damascus. So at that time, Medina was famous for sure. And Mecca was famous. Kufa was famous, Basra was famous as well. But since Basra is not connected to this story, I'm not putting that here. And then we have Kufa, right? Kufa and then Damascus. So now, Sayyidina Ali, karramallahu wajhahu, when he was leading the Khilafah, he was leading it from Kufa. And he got the allegiance from people from Mecca, Medina, and also from Damascus as well. However, the governor there, who was Muawiyah, fought with Sayyidina Ali. And we mentioned about the two battles, the battle of Jamal, the battle of Siffin, where a lot of people, a lot of Muslims, they died in those two battles. And then later on, as Sayyidina Ali was murdered, Hassan took over, and Hassan lasted for how long, we said? For about 7 months, right? The Khilafah. and then he gave it up to Muawiyah, and then Muawiyah continued for about 10 years, almost 11 years actually, after Sayyidina al-Hasan. But during this time though, there was no wars between Muslims. Everybody knew that Muawiyah is the leader at that time, and Muawiyah placed his own governors in different parts of the Islamic world. He placed governors in Egypt, he placed governors in Medina, and right here the governor in Medina was who? Marwan, right here, bin Hakam. He was also the cousin of Sayyidina Uthman. And if you remember, he was a part of the major problem why Sayyidina Uthman was murdered. If you remember from probably last year or a year before that, when we talked about the story of Sayyidina Uthman. But, so let's go on now. As everything is going well, if you remember the condition of Sayyidina Hussein that he signed to Muawiyah was that if you pretty much die, I mean the Khilafah goes to me. And it happened that Sayyidina al-Hasan died first because he was poisoned, and then Muawiyah continued with the Khilafah, as I said, for over 10 years, more than that. So now, Muawiyah as well came to an end. And right before he died, instead of having people elect the new Khalifa, or instead of going back to the brother of Sayyidina al-Hussein, who was the brother of Sayyidina al-Hasan, who was Sayyidina al-Hussein, who had a lot of respect from people, or Abdullah bin Zubayr, who was very well known at that time, or Abdullah bin Umar, who was still alive at that time. These were great, not just companions, but individuals who left their marks and who contributed so much to the society. But again, it's not about, it was not about, all right, so let's gather the ummah and let's have them decide. But it was about him giving the authority right away to his son, Yazid. And of course, Hassan has passed away, so why should I go back? We have, our son right here. And some scholars, they mention that perhaps that decision might have been good. And he probably thought, again, I'm not saying that's a good decision. I would reject that, as a matter of fact, I personally. But I also understand that point, that giving the power to others, right, it would have been a little bit hard to swallow for the people of Syria, because now they got used to this khilaf, they got used to Muawiyah, to the Umayyad, family and all of that. But again, I personally, I don't see that as an excuse. I personally don't see that as an excuse. Yes, it could affect maybe 20%, but not having Sayyidina al-Hussein, for example, or not having those who were qualified to lead from the family of the Nabi alayhi salatu salam, it would have been it would be way less problematic, right? It would be way less problematic than selecting Yazid as the new leader. Why? I mean, Yazid was not, through the books of history, he was not known to be a righteous person. He was not known to be somebody who made a change in the ummah. And again here, we're not talking, I'm not doing la'na, I am not cursing or anything like that, because some people, they go into two extremes, right? Into either cursing, or some people, they even value, they say, oh, Yazid was a righteous person and this and that, and so I don't want to do neither or. But I want to say that during his time, the Muslim world lost a lot. They lost North Africa, they lost so many other places, even Rhodes, Island, the Crete and Rhodes, and so many other places. And there was no improvement. There was no improvement during his time, because it was about the war, and And he didn't last that long to begin with, approximately about 3 years. So now, as the world is watching, Medina is watching now how Muawiyah is given the leadership to his own son, to Yazid. And Mecca is watching, Kufa in particularly is watching. Kufa in particularly is watching here. Why do I say Kufa? Because Kufa was a city where Sayyidina Ali was ruling from, and also Hassan during those 7 months. And Kufians, they had to kind of let it go. They were not all satisfied with Muawiyah and especially Yazid later on, but they just had to let it go because Hassan, he himself, he said, you know what, I abdicated the Khilafah. I gave it up to Muawiyah, and I have my reasons and all of that. So now, you can see that Kufians would be number one to be against this selection. What did they do? They reached out to Sayyidina Hussein by sending letters. A lot of letters. Every tribe was sending to him letters. Leaders of the tribes were sending to Sayyidina Hussein letters saying that we want you here and we want you to take over the Khilafah of the Ummah to lead us because we do not give bay'ah to Yazid. And as a matter of fact, they went to such a level where they said, we are not even going to perform Jum'ah prayers behind the governor that is appointed by Yazid, by the Umayyads later on. So they were ready to give up their Jum'ah. Because a governor usually would be the one to also lead the prayers. They were not governors like nowadays. They knew also from the Islamic perspective how to deliver a lecture, the khutbah, and how to lead the prayers as well. So that's what we have. And they're sending so many letters and all of that. So he says, it's probably the right thing to do is to go and to answer their call. So if somebody wants to judge and say, well, Hussein was wrong, why did he go there? He had a reason. Because he had so many requests. But, he said, before I go, let me make sure that I am doing this in the right way. By sending somebody and checking the place and making sure that the situation is ripe. So he sends Muslim bin Aqil. Muslim bin Aqil was the grandson of Abu Talib. So they were cousins. Muslim bin Aqil was the son of Aqil, who was the son of Abu Talib. So he goes first. And the moment he arrives in Kufa, he was in Medina, right? Muslim bin Aqil was in Medina because that's where Sayyidina al-Hussein was. And then later on, as a matter of fact, he went from Medina to Mecca. When it comes to the map, Mecca is on the bottom right here, and then Medina is on top. But anyways, as I said, we're not putting it according to the map. So they were in Medina, and Sayyidina al-Hussein went to Mecca. Why? Because he did not agree with the new governor that came from Yazid to Medina. Him, together with Abdullah bin Zubayr as well, the son of Sayyidina Zubayr, both Sahabas of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So what did they do? They went from Medina to Mecca. And in Mecca here, it was during this time when he sent Muslim bin Aqil to Kufa to check the situation and see what's happening. Is it true that these people from Kufa are really requesting me to come, or is it just a few people? I don't want to do the wrong move right here. So he goes there, Muslim bin Aqil, and he finds so much support from everybody. There were 12,000 people who gave the bay'ah to Muslim bin Aqil. And these 12,000 individuals, they represented so many other people behind as well. And scholars, when they talk about these numbers, they say that those who gave the bay'ah together with their families, if we have to count them, would be anywhere around 30 to probably 40 some thousand individuals who gave the bay'ah to Sayyidina Hussein. And this is a big thing. And now Aqil is watching this and he gets so much support, and everybody's like, we're looking forward for Sayyidina Hussein to come and to be the next leader and all of that. He will have our back, he will have our support. We are ready to even fight if that's needed. And now Muslim bin Aqil, the cousin of Al-Hussein, he writes a letter saying that the time is right. All of those letters that you received are true. People are in your support. All you need to do is just come. So now, as he writes the letter, long story short, there's a lot of details that I don't want to go into because it's late and I don't want to lose you through those details. I just want to give you the big picture right here. So at that time, when he goes to Kufa, Muslim bin Aqil, we have right here Yazid, who recognizes that there is something happening there. Because, I mean, you have so many people, even 12,000 individuals, giving bay'ah and all that. It's well known that something is happening in Kufa. So what he does? He replaces the governor. He replaces the governor, who was a Sahabi, as a matter of fact, Nu'man bin Bashir at that time. I'm not writing these names. But he replaces and he says, he is not good enough. So I'm going to send a master of interrogation, a master of politics, somebody who is very rough and tough and not afraid of anything, somebody who can go to war right away. So we see a very kind of an ugly personality and very rough personality, no mercy kind of. And that was Ubaydullah bin Ziyad. Nobody speaks highly of him in the books. Nobody speaks highly of him. So Ubaydullah bin Ziyad now comes to Kufa, and he came with less than 20 people. I think about 17 people. And all of a sudden, he started winning people over his side, saying that, remember about the security, remember about the Khilafah. Right now, it's in our hands. We need to do the best to avoid bloodshed. We need to do this. He started buying people with money as well, with gifts and all of that, especially the leaders. As I said, he knew how to zigzag very well. He didn't go straight, he zigzagged very well. So he got people on his side. He won all of those people. And as Muslim bin Aqil was staying there, he started losing people one by one, thousands by thousands, until he ended up having no support whatsoever. And at the same time now, long story short, again, I'm cutting so much, but Ubaydullah bin Ziyad, he catches him at the end. There was also Hani involved, who was a righteous person, who lived in Kufa. He had some power, political power as well. He was caught as well, and he was assassinated, as a matter of fact, because he played double, what's the word for it? Double, huh? He was, he appeared that he was with Umayyads, but at the same time he was pro Al-Hussein. So he had these double, No, not double personality, not double face, but maybe double agent, if we may say, but for something good, right? Maybe double agent, but there is probably another better word than that as well. But let's leave it right there for now. Just kind of a double agent who was playing for something positive. But anyways, he was caught as well, and he was assassinated by Ibn Ziyad. And then later on you have Muslim bin Aqil, who was also caught, and he was also assassinated by Ibn Ziyad. And he was thrown, as a matter of fact. He was thrown from above to the ground. After he was beaten up and suffered so much, then he was thrown from above. And then the letter did not make it to Sayyidina Hussein. The first letter made it to Sayyidina al-Hussein. So he received that. But as Muslim bin Aqil got caught and all that, he sent another letter saying, stay there. Don't come, because everybody is lost right now. We had so many people who supported us, but nobody is supporting us anymore. Stay there. Don't come to Kufa. This letter never made it to Sayyidina al-Hussein. So Sayyidina al-Hussein, remember about this letter. It made it, but very late. It was one of the people actually who used to, was a part of this punishment from Ibn Ziyad, who promised that he will deliver this. Not right away, but sometimes he did that, as Sayyidina Hussein was actually approaching Kufa later on. But anyways, Sayyidina al-Hussein was traveling, and he took with him his family members from Mecca now, right? He's in Mecca. Abdullah bin Zubayr stayed there. You had Abdullah bin Umar, Abdullah ibn Abbas, and so many of these other companions. They told to Sayyidina al-Hussein, don't go. We know people of Iraq, they were saying, we know people of Kufa, they're going to betray you. Again, when they say words like this, they're just referring to those individuals who you think that they will support, but they will betray. These were the Shias of Ali. At that time, the Shias of Ali, they didn't have a theological difference with Sunnis or even Emawis, but it was more a political difference. It is about who we stand for. But then later on, it became theological and so on. So again, as I said, Sayyidina al-Hussein started, he did not, he appreciated the advice of some of the Sahabas who were senior at that time, and some other individuals who told him, don't go, don't go, don't go. But he decided to go because he felt that he had a responsibility and he had a call. And, he had Muslim bin Aqil, he has a lot of support. And he took together with him family members. And they say that there were about 100 of them, approximately. And as he was going through the desert, he also got accompanied by people of the desert, and the number increased. But then later on, when he received the letter, according to some narrations, when he received the letter, all of these people from the desert, these Bedouins, they said that, you know what, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look like you got the support there, because he received that late, right, when he was already almost in Kufa. But then he said, you know what, I'm still going to go regardless and see what it is. And he was also thinking about Muslim bin Aqil, right, that he's there. He didn't even know that he was murdered yet. He had no idea. So he had from his family there, he had all of these other individuals, and he just wanted to see what's the situation. And then right now here we have Ubaidullah bin Ziyad, who employs also Umar bin Sa'd. This is the son of Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, the Sahabi. And he was in charge of the army. So bin Ziyad was the governor, who was sent as a governor, and bin Sa'd was sent as in charge of the army. And then you have also Shimr, who was in charge of, we may call it battalion, or a small, right? And then Hur was also another person who was in the army that was sent. But this individual, instead of remaining in the army to fight now Sayyidina al-Hussein and his family, he heard and he saw the generosity and the great character of Sayyidina al-Hussein, and he came with his side. So he left that side, and later on in the battle he fought against Yazid's army. He fought on the side of Sayyidina al-Hussein. This was a power that he had, and not just him, but a bunch of other people together with him as well. So that's a little bit further into the story. But as we're talking right now, long story short, Umar bin Saad, he goes there and he shows that he doesn't want to do it. The books of seerah, the books of history, they it's written that he didn't want to do it. But then, he's kind of pushed, and he's promised by Ubaidullah bin Ziyad. A lot of promises and prestige and this and that. So at the end, he kind of doesn't want to do it, but he takes this responsibility. And then as Sayyidina al-Hussein comes close to Kufa, they surround him. And you have the army general who comes to him and says, well, you have to give up. Like Umar bin Saad, he says you have to give up and you have to come with us. You're going nowhere. And he says, no, he says, absolutely not. But I have 3 conditions. If that's the case, he says, well, you have no connection there. He learns that Muslim bin Aqil is murdered, his cousin, and there's no hope at this point. Especially seeing that you have 4,000 people. This army that came to fight al-Hussein, initially to stop him, but then it turned into a fight. They were supposed to go and fight a Turkish tribe, Daylamis. And they were told to stop from going there and return and go towards Karbala and stop Hussein together with his family. So they say there were about 4,000 people, 4,000 soldiers. So now, as they appeared in front of Sayyidina al-Hussein realizes all of the situation. He sees the big army in front of him. He says, this is serious. It's not a joke. So he completely realized at that point that this is it. He can't go any further. He has no support whatsoever, and they are in control. They are in full control of everything. So he says, all right, he analyzed the situation, and Sayyidina al-Hussein says, all right, I have 3 conditions. Number 1, allow me to go straight to Yazid. Allow me to go straight to Yazid and talk to him. So there's a lot of words of historians here, who say that, well, he already knew him. It would not have been gone into him being murdered in the battle if he would have gone to Yazid and this and that and whatever. There are some statements made by some historians and kind of conclusions supposing that this could have been happened. But anyways, it happened whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed to happen. So as he was there, he said, first, I want to go to Yazid and talk to him face to face. If this is not acceptable, then I have another condition that I can put forth, and that is that I go back to where I came from. I'm not going to go to Kufa, I go back. And number 3, if that's not possible either, then let me go in other places. Kind of accepting to go in exile by himself, and his family, he will go somewhere else and probably join other efforts in spreading Islam and things like that, of that nature. Now, Umar bin Saad, who initially was not to fight, was not for fighting Sayyidina al-Hussein, and he kind of sympathized, right? So he gets happy and he goes back to bin Ziyad and he says, hey, look what we have. We can get out of this situation. We have, Hussein is not going to make it to Kufa. He's not interested at this point to come to Kufa. Here are 3 things. So let's choose one of these 3. And he says, bin Ziyad says, none of those. he has to surrender and he has to accept the bay'ah of Yazid. Now, Yazid didn't have to be there in person, right, in order for him to give the allegiance, or the bay'ah as we call it. He didn't have to be there. So the representative, which was in this case bin Ziyad, would be the person, like you shake his hand and you accept him, it means that you have accepted the leadership of Yazid. As simple as that. Because he is his representative, bin Ziyad. So he says he has to surrender and he has to give bay'ah to Yazid. The grandchild of a Nabi, grandson of a Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, was not going to accept this dhulm, this oppression, because this was clearly oppression. He gave him everything. Like, let me go back. We came thinking that there is something. I'll go back. Or I will go in a different place. Or let me talk straight face to face with Yazid. These are very normal, very logical approaches that unless and unless you are an oppressor, unless and unless you are a zalim, you're going to accept it. Right? Unless you are a zalim, unless you want the worst of Sayyidina al-Hussein. So bin Ziyad showed that he was a zalim by putting this condition and saying, I'm not going to accept any of those. My condition is that look, the family, this is Ahl Bayt. If he prayed, if this individual prayed, in his prayer he said, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, or Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. If he prayed 5 times a day, or even one time a day, or even one Jum'ah throughout the week, he had to say this. So part of Ahl Bayt is also Sayyidina al-Hussein. How irrational is that? How oppressive is that? To insist in having him surrender and knowing that he's not going to do it. Knowing his personality, knowing that he is somebody who has sharaf, somebody who has honor. It is as saying right now, you either have to accept the oppression or be murdered, pretty much. What, do you think that he's going to accept oppression? No, he will go as a shaheed. He would prefer that. So the battle kept going and going, because first, they started by withdrawing or not having them go to the Furat. Furat now, we can just write it right here on the side. Furat and Dijla, these are the 2 rivers in Iraq. And they are very essential for fish, for water, and electricity, and so many other things. So Furat, the river, was very close to the place where Sayyidina al-Hussein was in Karbala. But they were not able to drink from it. And they were left very thirsty and very hungry for many days. So they ended up, again, there is a lot of details that I don't have time to go through, but I'll just mention that they were, very weak at that point. The son of Sayyidina al-Hussein, one of them, Ali bin Hussein. I'll just write this name as well right here because this is important. Ali bin Hussein. That is Zainul Abidin, known as Zainul Abidin. And he's actually the one who also continued with the other offspring of Sayyidina al-Hussein, from the Fatima al-Hussein, and Zainul Abidin is the only one, right, that survived. So he got sick and he had high fever. Now, as I said, this person goes on the side of Sayyidina al-Hussein, and when he comes back, Umar bin Sa'd, he says, you know what, you have to give up to Sayyidina al-Hussein. You have to give up, or otherwise we have to fight. You have to give up because bin Ziyad is not accepting these conditions. You have to surrender and you have to accept the allegiance of Bay'ah of Yazid. So he fought, and the fighting started. But how can you win with over 4,000? right? Over 4,000 individuals like that with less than 100, and many of them were children. Family members. We're not talking about fighters. We're talking about family members. Many of them were, women and children. Maybe they say around 30 they were able to fight. So imagine an army of 4,000 people. And they didn't have to put all of that. Well, they fought in Hur. And those soldiers who were with Hur from the other side, from bin Sa'ad's side, that came on the Hussein side, they fought and they became shuhada quickly. And they started falling one by one, the family members of Sayyidina al-Hussein. And even his children, except Zainul Abidin, as I said, and the daughters and all of that, the ladies, they were not murdered. His sister was there as well, Zainab was there. And so at that time, it was only him who remained, Sayyidina al-Hussein at the end. And, they right away, Shimr now, he commands the killing of Sayyidina al-Hussein. Shimr, he commands the killing of Sayyidina al-Hussein. And this Sinan bin Anas, this other person, he's the one who actually chopped Sayyidina al-Hussein. And they cut his head off at that point. And shamefully, they brought his head to bin Ziyad first. And again, there is a lot of, he tried to show disgrace as he's bringing the head of Sayyidina al-Hussein there. And there are other companions, even Sahabas of Nabi alayhi salatu salam, telling him how shameful this is, what you're doing. As I said, I don't like to go into the details right now. But then later on, the head is taken to Yazid. And narrations mention that Yazid cried upon seeing this. Remember, Yazid was with Sayyidina al-Hussein in an army actually when they were young. They participated in wars together. I'm not saying that they loved each other, but they were, at least they knew each other. They knew each other well, perhaps. And the family members who were there present, because they were taken as hostage, prisoners, in front of Yazid. So, and then he commands them, he says, take off the, what do you call these? The shackles, right? So take off the shackles from their heads, from their hands, and free them right away. And they gave them, food, and they gave them gifts, and they returned them with honor in the city of Medina back there. As he saw them crying, I remember there was a narration that says that one of the family members says to Yazid, how you have no shame. Look at all of them crying. And he says that even my family members, they're all crying. He says all of our women, they're crying there as well for what happened. But here's the thing now. As we come to a conclusion of this one, we come to an end. We cannot say that he has no responsibility. Like, it would be absurd to say that Yazid, for example, is somebody who was righteous and had no responsibility on killing of Sayyidina al-Hussein. That would be very absurd. Why? First of all, there was another governor instead of bin Ziyad there. So he replaced in order to send somebody who is rough. Number one. Number two, if he felt sorry and if he really cried with real tears, or even if he repented, and said, you know what, I have done something horrible here. May God forgive me. Let me try to do something. What would be the first thing that he would do? Right? So he would imprison. Because if he didn't give him the order to do it, and he's all of a sudden shocked why he did it, he would even kill him, punish him with a capital punishment, or even imprison him. But no, he didn't do that. All right, forget about that. Umar bin Sa'ad, nope. How about Shimr? Nope. None of them. So he did not punish anybody. As a matter of fact, like after the death of Sayyidina al-Hussein, Mecca and Medina, they stood up against him. They stood against him. And he sent an army. He sent an army to Medina. And he fought. That army fought the people. He himself was not present there. He was back in Damascus, in Syria. But he fought the people of Medina, and there were over 700 huffaz alone. Among them, many sahabas of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam who died during that time. Why? Because they were against him, against of what he did, because of what he did to the family of the Nabi alayhi salatu wasallam. The family, I said, not just al-Hussein. There were other members of his family there. So for what he did, they all stood up. They all rejected him. And the Mecca did the same thing. So first they sent that, they murdered, they did a horrible massacre, a horrible massacre in Medina. And after they finished that, the army headed for Mecca, because there was Abdullah bin Zubayr now, who was also against Yazid. And they were, they surrounded the city, and people had no food and no drink except for little. And they were about to also start another fight there. They stayed for about a month. Right? And then as this was happening, all of a sudden now, Yazid dies. Very shortly after the murdering of Sayyidina al-Hussein, Yazid as well died. And then army had to return. Or the army that approached Mecca and surrounded the city, they had to return and go back. So at least for that time it was safe. And then later on it was attacked again. Until it reached that Hajjaj destroyed. He was from the Umayyads, Hajjaj. He destroyed the Kaaba as well. And killed Sayyidina Abdullah bin Zubayr and so on. So all of those individuals who participated in murdering, in killing the grandson of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all of them, they met a very bad end. Bin Ziyad was murdered by Al-Mukhtar. If you have heard of him, Al-Mukhtar was the one who murdered Bin Ziyad, and in the same way, he cut his head off. And it was on a, I don't want to give details and all of that stuff. It's probably too much. But anyways, he met that end as well. And they say, as a matter of fact, that a snake, when they were gathered, when his head was presented in the room, a snake came out of nowhere, and it went straight into the head, straight into the head of Bin Ziyad, and it remained there, which was something very horrible for people to see. Shimr met the same end as well. He was murdered right away. All of these individuals met a very bad end. So again, when we conclude the story, we have to remember, first and foremost, the courage, right? We have to remember the courage that people of Ahl Bayt had. And we talked about courage in our last Jummah. And we have to also mention that it is right thing to do to stand against oppressors. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he taught us in the very famous hadith that when somebody sees something bad, he tries to change it. A believer, when he sees something bad, he tries to change that with his hand. And if he cannot do that with his hand, then with his mouth. And if he cannot do that with his mouth, with the heart. And that is, the weakest out of all of these, but still acceptable as well. So Sayyidina al-Hussein tried to change. He did not become oppressive. He did not fight for something that was not right. He fought for justice and for honor, and for the honor of his family members and the honor of the ummah of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He assumed the best from people. He did his homework by sending Muslim bin Aqil to Kufa, analyzing the situation and not just going, okay, I just want to go there because I received these letters. But it happened that they were too evil to cut the person and not let the person deliver the letter. And this way, Sayyidina al-Hussein and his family had no clue of what was happening. And it was too late. They were already right there next to Kufa, when they learned. And Karbala from Kufa, it's about, I would say, an hour and a half, approximately 70 kilometers, So it's not too far from Kufa. But again, we do not go to two extremes. What are the two extremes? Number one, the first extreme is by showing honor and virtues to Yazid, number one. And even there are individuals throughout the history who even cursed Hussein, who cursed the family of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. If you didn't know that, now you know that. And on the other hand, you have those who now they have considered these Ali Baytul Rasul alayhi salatu salam to be divine individuals. To be divine individuals. Individuals who are assigned by God, the Imam, the 12 Imams, for example, that are assigned by God, and they're ma'soomeen. Ma'soom means somebody who commits no sin whatsoever. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purified them. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know that they are in Jannah. We know. Sayyidina Ali is in Jannah. It's a very famous hadith of the Nabi alayhi salatu. But for people to claim that all the a'immas are ma'soomeen and all of them they receive revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly in a form of wahi, and they know the ghaib, they know the unseen, and so on and so on. And everything is about Ahlul Bayt. There is no attention at all to the Sahabas, or there is a cursing, as a matter of fact, of Sahabas and cursing of the wife of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the wives. I do that plural. Then this is the other extreme. This is the other extreme, and we take that middle path where we love the Ahlul Bayt of Rasul alayhi salatu salam. We know that they have a very special place in the heart of a Nabi and in the heart of the Ummah, generally speaking. We believe that Sayyidina Ali was on the truth. We stand with Sayyidina Ali as well. And we know that Muawiyah was wrong. And we know that Yazid was an oppressor. Yazid was an oppressor for sure. But we do not go to such an extent where we start cursing the Sahabas. We say that we are allowed to think positively about the Sahabas. And we say that, he was wrong, Muawiyah was wrong, but perhaps he was fighting for, standing for what he believed to be right, to be the truth. Right? We give that husn al-dhan, especially to the companions of the Nabi alayhi salatu salam. That's where we stand. And when it comes to after the companions, when it comes to Yazid and all of that, we can mention that they were oppressors. We can mention that perhaps he didn't have the husn al-dhan. Not perhaps, but we know that he didn't have the husn al-dhan. We say that very openly. He didn't have the husn al-dhan, but we don't go to such extents where we start saying la'natullahi alayhi and stuff. What are we going to win out of those? What do you win out of that? We don't get into those things. We say that the way how we believe to be, and we stand for what we believe to be the truth, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better the situation of the ummah always, and inshallah make us from those who learn justice, learn also what it means to be an oppressive, and they also learn these qualities of the best of the humanity. These were the Ahlul Bayt al-Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah resurrect us inshallah in the hereafter together with Sayyidina al-Hussein, al-Hasan, Ali, Fatima, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and his ashab al-kiram, his beloved companions radiyallahu anhum jami'a. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Sayyidina Muhammad.